A cozy TV conversation with Karen Grassle, author of the new memoir, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust. We'll start pretty far forward in your life, but you returned to California.
I had a independent movie that I was flown in to do, and the movie fell through, and I was stranded. And then I said, oh dear, now what? And I thought maybe I had given it a good shot and I should give up show business. I thought maybe, maybe I was wrong. Maybe this isn't really what I'm supposed to be doing. I should really be self-supporting by now. So I thought I'll go back to school, but how am I going to pay for that? So my mom loaned me money. I got new photos. I took them over to the talent agency and they sent me up for Little House on the Prairie. I was auditioning for a few different things and I got the call to go and meet Michael Landon. And I wasn't too with popular culture. So I said, well, which one of the brothers was he? This really, really famous guy, right? We had this interview where I told them about my Broadway show that closed in 5 days and my movie that fell through and all this hard luck story. And we all laughed about it. And then I got in the car to go back and I thought, oh my gosh, I told them I'm a loser. This is terrible. But I realized I told them the truth and it was who I am. And if they didn't want me, it wasn't the right job for me, which was a moment of real sanity, And before I got home, they were calling, please come back, get the sides, read tomorrow. So I went in to read, and this was really, really fun. I sat on this couch where they told me to sit, and Mike sat right down on the floor beside me. He was very close and he's looking right into my eyes and it's very distracting, So I'm just like trying to hang on to myself. And we read the first scene and he says, good. And then we read the second scene. And I'm telling you, he jumps up from the floor and he yells, send her to wardrobe. And I was stunned. I was like, I got the job just like that? And then Ed Friendly said, Mike, could I speak with you for a moment? And I was like, uh-oh. So they took me across the hall and had me wait in Mike's office. And when I went back, they were still smiling and they were very nice and they didn't say a thing about me having the part. I was like, who knows? I think I've got it, but I don't know. And Mike's eyes were kind of like, you got it, you got it. So by the time I got back, my agent was calling. They want you to do a test. I was completely let down. I was like, no, I thought I had the job. Well, it turned out that because I didn't have a name, they needed to get approval from the network. So it turned out that after Christmas, we did this little closed circuit interview and they sent that out to New York. And before I got home, I had the job. And that was a great Christmas present,
Tell me, you described so wonderfully in the book, the your first trip to the set.
This is a part of California that I had never really been to. It's near Yosemite. It's up in the mountains, about 8,000 feet. And it was pitch dark when we arrived. And I was told to go to the makeup trailer and get ready. And I got into my costume then and I had a cup of coffee and I was standing around in the snow wondering, what's going to happen. And over to the right is a huge truck, lots of heavy equipment, and up on a big crane is Mike. And he's setting up the shot. And they bring him down and they bring him back up, and he looks wonderful, And of course, he's high as a kite, excited about his first day on his own show. And they had a little cabin there with a little yellow light in the window. And I knew that must be the cabin where Carolyn's parents are, and she's going to say goodbye to them. And after a while, they had us come and get up on the wagon and shoot the scene of goodbye. And I was very touched. The idea that this woman would never see her parents again, and that she was going, she knew not where, with these 3 little girls. And I think all of that fed us all during the pilot, because we were going, we knew not where. We didn't know how this was going to turn out. And so there was a kind of bonding we had, and it was wonderful. When he gets up on the wagon with me and the girls are in the back, I give him this little, like, I'm with you, but I can only manage a half smile because it's a big moment for Carolyn. And then we do the take, and afterward he says, I like that. So it was positive reinforcement, and the beginning of him giving me hints about the work and when I was doing well.
So the second episode, I know you talk about coming to a home, right? And now there's some permanence, and in some ways that reflected your own sense of having some permanence. You had a job that was clearly going to last for a while.
We're home.
We're home.
Yes, when we finally came to Plum Creek and the family was going to build a house, and there was a town nearby where my little girls would be able to go to school, so I didn't have to worry about that. And I, Karen, who had been living in 4 or 5 places since I'd come back to the States, had lived in about 8 while I was in England, was also like, now I'm going to stay put. And I thought the show would run at least 3 years.
Little did you know.
No, I really didn't know.
And I know in the book you talk, it's funny, I was reflecting on it, so many strong female relationships that you talk about. Friends, Karen D and Tony, those are the names, and your mother, of course, too. But somehow out of all that comes Ma Ingalls.
Well, at the time there was very little research about the Ingalls family. So we had Laura's books, but Laura didn't write very much about her mother. And the photograph that we had showed a very, very staunch, strong woman, but no one that I could really relate to.
What's the matter with Pa? He's just tired. Like the rest of us.
But my own mom she had a sharecropper father and a housekeeper mother. She went on horseback to school. She had left home when she was only 13 to earn her own board and room, and worked her way through San Jose State College in 3 years and got out and started teaching in a 1-room schoolhouse. So that was my role model.
That early episode where you are thrust into being a substitute teacher and suddenly have to learn to play baseball.
Oh, yeah, that was so fun. Boy, I was so nervous about how am I going to hit a ball? I'm not a jock type. And, all the guys on Monday mornings, that's all they talked about was whatever game had been on over the weekend. And it was nice because, everybody could join in, but not me. And now they had me hitting this baseball really well in the script, and there was no time. There was no time to go get a baseball and a bat and go somewhere and practice in a schoolyard or something. So I drew again on my mother's wisdom. She was part of a kind of philosophy called Science of Mind, which was about how you think about life affects how life happens to you. And it was kind of the background for the power of positive thinking that came a little later.
Mhm.
And she had turned me on to a book called Psycho-Cybernetics, which talked about mental practice. And there were lots of examples of athletes figuring out what the play was going to be and picturing themselves catching the ball and running to the touchdown and, practicing mentally. And I thought, well, actors, we practice mentally. We go over our parts. So I did that. I did it when I was standing in line at the bank. I did it at the car wash. I did it while I ate breakfast. And then the day came and they pitched the ball and whap, I knocked that thing. And it was so great because the crew was shocked. They were ready to be patient with me, and they were going to fake the shot if they had to. And they'd already discussed all that. And then Ma did it.
The award. So suddenly, I think Michael takes sick, and they quickly last minute rewrite things, and you stepped into a big role.
It was a very serious illness. He had spinal meningitis, and they called me on the weekend and said, Mike's in the hospital. They've packed him in ice. We're rewriting the show for you. Well, on the one hand, I was very worried for Mike and for his family. But Tom, to be honest, on the other, I was like, let me at it.
Something to sink your teeth into at last.
Because every actor likes a good part. So in that, I got to do a lot of things that were out of the usual mode for Carolyn. I got to put out a fire, get very angry and punish Mary, sort of almost out of line, angry punishment. It was really very, very demanding and exciting. And before we finished it, we had word that Mike was going to be fine. And so then we finished and everyone could breathe.
The season 2 comes, contract negotiations don't go well. There starts to be a rift.
My lawyer and I went to see Mike to say, well, let's talk about, the future seasons. In California, you had a contract that went on for 7 years. So if you got a hit show, it was very common to renegotiate based on your ratings. But Mike didn't want to talk about it. And we were over a barrel. Am I supposed to go back to work or not, or what? And I had trepidation about not showing up. And my lawyer didn't want me to withhold my work. So I kept going to work when we started season 2. And I think, gosh, it was sometime late in season 3, maybe, where it was finally settled. So I worked for almost 2 years without knowing what I was earning, and being punished really for sticking to my guns.
I know you talk about the episode A Matter of Faith, which was a big challenging Ma episode, and also a moment where you and Michael Landon worked together again, finally.
Yes, that
About
was,
that one.
yes. Well, you know, the episode was based on an episode they had done in Bonanza that Mike had starred in, where he hurt his arm and he was going to have to cut off his arm. And they based A Matter of Faith on that story, only with Ma, it was her leg. And that was really fun, you know, because we built these prosthetic pieces to show the swelling. And our makeup man, Whitey Snyder, who's so talented, painted them in these garish colors. You know, it was really great, just, you know, really, really bad. And I just limped around my house for days, you know, really trying to get the feel of it. But when they were finished with the rough cut, Mike didn't think it was very good. And he came to me and he said, you know, we've got to reshoot some of that. And I said, okay. So he showed it to me and he was right. It just didn't come over. So one afternoon, often we had these times in the afternoon after the girls went home, we did the work and he directed it and we fixed it up, you know. And gosh, it was so nice because it was like those other afternoons when we had collaborated. And I said to him, boy, I have really missed this, working together like this. And he was like, yeah. And I said, what should I do if that happens again? And he said, well, you can't do anything. I'm the boss. I said, well, okay. He said, I wouldn't talk. And so we had that meeting, you know, and then I said, thank you, you know, thank you for taking that responsibility. And I put my arm through his and we walked back to the set together. And I bet that crew was so relieved. They must have been so tired of that tension.
You did get your moments. I know one of my favorites I know you were talked about was Olsen versus Olsen, where we channeled the Greek tragedy for the Prairie Lysistrata.
Yes, this writer, Chris Abbott, wanted to break into television and had brought a spec script to me, and I had liked it a lot, but the network didn't buy it. But I kept her in mind, and she wanted to break into Little House. And oh, by the late seasons, it's very difficult for a writer because we've done so many stories. What can they come up with, you know? So she and I would meet on my patio and drum up ideas. And our favorite was this one based on Lysistrata, where in the Greek comedy, the women refuse sex until the men stop going to war. And in our story, the women refuse to do any work until the men sign a petition for property rights for women. So the men, you know, they dig in their heels. They're not going to sign that thing. And the women just decamp to Nellie's restaurant. And Mrs. Olsen and Carolyn come together. They are fighting for this together. And that is so fun, you know. And meanwhile, you know, they have all those fun scenes where the guys, you know, they can't cope with the kids and the food and, you know, all that stuff.
Don't cry, honey, it's all right.
This has been a COZI TV conversation with actor Karen Grassle. Look for her new book, Bright Lights, Prairie Dust, in bookstores everywhere.